Welcome to our weekly Friday talk and tour series when we share the opportunity to visit the studios of our wonderful artists and hear about their works and inspiration. These visits are brought to you by the Duncan McClellan Gallery and the DMG School Project of St. Petersburg, Florida. Thank you for joining us.
Well, good afternoon. Happy Friday to everybody. I really want to thank you for being here. As you know, it means a great deal that you join us each week. And we really love having the artists come on. We have some announcements. Next week, we're going to show you some images of our new hot shop and how we've expanded it, all the new equipment, and what we're going to be doing in the next few months. We're starting a new emerging artist residency for DMG School Project. Will Ortman and Trey Snowden will be our emerging artists. And it gives these artists 6 weeks of glass blowing, which is very expensive. And we give them a show. We kind of guide them on how to deal with galleries, how to present their work and give lectures. And it really gives them a start. We put them up and we mentor them for the 6 weeks. And today's guest is a dear friend that I've known for many decades. And he knows, and I know, how hard it is for an emerging artist to start. And so it's with real pleasure to introduce a dear friend that I've known for almost 3 decades,
Wow.
that is probably the most liked artist I have ever met. And I'm not going to embarrass him during this talk today. I know that Sid Hutter, I believe, is on the line, so I'll leave that for Sid.
Yeah, let me harangue Dingbat there a little bit, okay? Just to get him nervous before the slide lecture.
So, Mary, I want to thank all my team too. Danielle, Irene, Mary, for producing this each week. It's a great way to connect with everybody. So if we can't have you in town, if you are, we'd love to see you in the gallery, but this is a next best thing. So Mary, please take it away.
Thanks, Duncan, and thanks, Sid. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Before we start, just a few housekeeping things. If you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, use your chat button in the center of your screen below. And if you want to really watch Jim as he's narrating, choose the speaker view in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and you'll see Jim as he presents his work and his presentation. As Duncan said, Jim is an artist who is so well liked in the gallery and everywhere he exhibits. He's worked with some of the most notable names in the contemporary studio glass movement over the years, and he's developed a really unique personal style. Besides seeing his technical skill in the presentation, you'll also get a chance to experience his humor, his whimsy, and as we've come to realize, just his general joie de vivre, which shows in his work. So Jim, welcome. Thank you for being here. Thanks to you and Kara for taking the time to put your presentation together and share it with all of our guests. So let's welcome Jim Wilbat. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's going to be very hard to live up to those comments. I hope I do my best here. I want to welcome everybody on this chat. It's very nice of you to put this all together for me. If I didn't have my wife and the crew with Duncan, this would not happen. I'm an old school guy, so I don't know computers. But I want to thank everybody, Duncan, Irene, Mary, and Danielle for this opportunity. So let's get started. I want to show you some pictures. And to start off, we have Kara and me sitting in the back of our house up in Deerfield, Illinois, which is a northern suburb of Chicago. Here we are at our wedding back in 1986, and I look a little younger back then. Here's my daughter, Callie. She's working as a speech therapist in a nursing home in the Chicago area. And this is my son, Ryan, who is living in New York, and he does set designs and also costume designs for TV and stage. Here's the family at a vacation this past winter. And here's some of the collections that I have over the last 30, 40 years of collecting artists, friends, and stories along the way. Here's Duncan and Irene. Now, the way I met Duncan was at a show in Kansas City. I was a peer juror, and the peer juror is somebody that gives a rating of the artist so the director has an idea of who they're going to invite next year. As I went around the show at the Plaza, I was blown away by Duncan's work. I immediately engaged him in a conversation. I said, let's continue this. We got a couple of hours. Let's go eat. We went to a restaurant. It took about an hour and a half as we talked. And the only thing Duncan was worried about was these peer jurors that he heard about. And he just went on and on the whole time as we drank and ate. So as the bill came at the end of our time, the check was pushed over towards Duncan. And he kind of looked at me like, why am I going to take care of this? I said, I'm your peer juror. So that immediately got us bonded together. We laughed so hard, and we've been friends ever since. So much friends that he took Karen and I on a cruise ship, little cruise for 3 days down to Cozumel. Here's the three of us sitting at the beach, holding hands at Irene and Duncan's favorite spot. Now I'm going to give you a little history. Started at Illinois State in ceramics. I'm probably my junior year there. And who comes into the the ceramic studio, but Sid Hutter. And Sid was a glass blower a couple of years into his 4 years there. And he kind of made a smart aleck remark to me. He said, when you're done playing around in the mud, why don't you try glass? And I just took that as, oh my God, how can he say that? I'm going to do this. Senior year, I dropped everything, blew glass for a year, and because of Sid, I went to grad school. I went to University of Kansas in glass, and I was able to teach for about 2.5 years in the ceramic department to get me through grad school. Some of the influence that I've had in the past is Hans Hofmann, because of his color theory of laying one color on top of another, and also Pablo Picasso, because of the faces that he's created. Here I'm at one of my outdoor shows. It's Coconut Grove. I won an award, and this is how I display some of my works. This is a typical booth shot of things that I carry. A lot of the directors of the art shows like my colorful, whimsical images, so they wind up on posters. Here I'm at SOFA Chicago. I've been doing that for about 14 years because of Duncan's recommendation to the gallery owner. Here's a typical booth shot of what I take to SOFA. I've also been able to be asked to blow glass on the Corning stage. It's usually Sunday afternoon when nobody's around. Oftentimes we go for family vacation, we went to Mexico City, down to Frida Kahlo's house, which is now now a museum. She very muchly impressed me by her struggle and her art. Here's a gang. We always travel together. It's usually every year. So you can start seeing some of the influence, what Frida did for me. I immediately rushed back home and started creating these heads with butterflies and flowers and bringing back into the color theory that Hans Hofmann has. I really like how the skirts flow because of the intricacy of the cane, the twisted cane, and the millifioris. Now I'm going to show you a little video. I have a studio just outside, maybe 12 miles away from the house. It's in Mundelein, Illinois, which is another suburb of Chicago. So as we walk in, I do have a nice display of glass that you can see. It's a lot cleaner than usual because I'm always pulling work and changing things and doing photos. So this is a nice representation of the colors that I use, some of the whimsical heads that I do, the vases and other pieces that I create. Now we're going to go into the blowing room. This studio is about 1,800 square feet. And as you can see, I really tidied the place up. It's never this clean.
Now, Jim, did you build some of this equipment yourself?
Basically, I've created or built all of these at one time or another. As a glass artist goes, as you need more equipment, as you get bigger in your work, you have a tendency to go, oh, I need more equipment. And I don't have the luxury of paying somebody to do it, so I build it all. My theory is if you build it, you can always fix it. Here's my drawers, and this cabinet was given to me by Duncan because he couldn't take it home when he was up here in the Chicago area doing a show. So I was a benefactor of 2 of these. All the knobs I created to make sure that I know what color goes in there. And a marvering table, which is a little warped because of Duncan and I came up, and Duncan lent me his strength. And for about an hour and a half, we kept that thing hot, picking up shards and things. Here are 3 different glory holes. As one works, you know, things get bigger. So I've got 3 different sizes. And as we travel through here, the glory hole runs about 2,300 degrees. Keep everything hot while I'm working. And all the insides are your typical refractory materials. After this, I'm going to show you, well, it's kind of hot, 120 in there. So we have your pipe warmer and the furnace. I'm going to walk over to, open this up. There's the crucible and all the heat. As I turn around, we have my pickup oven over on the right here. This is where I lay out all my color and shards. This gets heated up to about 1,000 degrees. You'll see in the video in the future of how I pick things up. Of course, we have annealing ovens in the back. This is where I put the glass in after we create it, my knockoff box. The bench, the torch, and the blocks in the back, so they're easily gotten into. Now let's go around the corner. It's a short, simple time where I have the grinding wheel, which does the rough grinding, the belt sander behind us, and then also the grinding wheel to do all the polishing. That's pretty much the equipment. I didn't build those. I was fortunate enough to buy those. A little wet saw, and that's the basic tour of the studio. So we're going to go on with some other slides.
So Jim, can you talk a little bit about why color is so important to you?
I was a frustrated painter in undergraduate school. When I was in ceramics, after playing with the glazes and trying to create the colors that I want, I was constantly frustrated. And this is where Sid came in. When he got me to the glass studio, and my first 6 weeks there, I was just exposed to all this color, all this technique, and my head exploded because of the color. Because you could get the immediate color most of the time out of the annealer in a day or two. And I just thought that was fabulous. So all this waiting in between glazing and trimming and bisfiring and taking things out of the kiln in ceramics at 3 weeks at the earliest, I was just frustrated if it didn't turn out what the image I had in my mind. Here's my crew. This is Gina and Anna. They've been with me for several years, and they do so much work for me because, I come from the old school of, you got to blow glass yourself. Well, these two ladies join me, and I've been very fortunate with having them as help. Here's Gina and I pulling cane. As you can see, I'm putting a lot of tension on it because you want to keep it straight, and depending on the dimension, depending on how hard you pull it. The slats on the ground are something that we're going to put the cane on so it doesn't come in contact with the cold concrete, even though the studio's 110. Here's some more cane that I can use at any time. Here's some of the close-up cane that I've cut and used in the future. Here's the annealer laid out, ready for me to demonstrate one of my Van Gogh vases or my Monet vases. They're all laid out. I'm rolling this up. It's hot. It's about 1100 degrees. I do a lot of open houses in November and December on the weekends to invite the public out because everybody's saying, how do you do this? And you can explain glass blowing, but people don't understand it until they see it. So the kids come out, the grandparents come out, whether it's after Thanksgiving or before Christmas, they have just a great time. This is the color that I'm using. It is System 96. I throw that in the furnace and it melts down. The furnace here is just being lit up, so give you some idea instead of staring into a hot mess. The crucible and the beginning of the flame, this furnace takes about 4 days to get up so I don't crack anything. Yes, you can see it's past 100 degrees, and that's during the winter where I open up the doors. Some of the frit is laid out on the marbling table. I use a couple of different sizes, usually size 1, size 2. And the basic technique that I'm using, I create a shard or a rondelle. It's created with 2 colors. It's usually a dark transparent color, which is the dark rod on the bottom, and a white up on top. You'll see the front side of the shard or the rondelle. I'm cutting the rondelle in half now, breaking it apart. And for every color I use in my technique, I have to create a rondelle for that specific color. So if I'm using a half a dozen to 9 colors on the pieces, I have to create that many. Now you're going to see, now that you've seen the raw materials and the tour of my studio, I'm going to show you a short video of me blowing a rondelle. It's very short with a little music.
Work it, make it, do it, make sense. Harder, better, faster, stronger. More than power, never. Ever, after, work it, over. Work it, make it, do it, make sense. Harder, better, faster, stronger.
It is a good song.
Work it, harder, make it better, do it faster, make sense, stronger. More than ever, hour after hour, work it never over. Work it harder, make it better, do it faster, make sense, stronger. More than ever, hour after hour, work it never over. Work it harder, make it better, do it faster, make sense, stronger. More than ever, hour after hour, work it never.
So that'll give you a little idea of the basic technique that I use to create all these rondelles, which wind up getting cut up and broken up and put onto my shard vases. Here are some of the earlier work that I created. I really like the texture and the shards and everything's not quite heated all the way in or melted in.
Jim, we have a question.
Sure.
Sure. Are you using the Effetra glass in some of your work?
The what kind of glass?
EFFETRE.
I don't even know what that is, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
I'm going to have to go to school on that.
It's a Venetian glass factory in Murano. They make color
Oh,
glass.
thank you, Sid. No,
Right.
or Duncan, the color that I use is from Olympic Colorado. It used to be from CNR Lou, and I do use a little gaffer, so it's European European glass or New Zealand colors.
That's
The vibrance of the glass is because I'm putting the white glass on top of the color. So it makes everything pop, which is why Hans Hofmann is a big influence, because I wanted that push-pull, the way he laid one color on top of the other.
Perfect.
Here's just a sandblasted shard, playing around. I'm just doing everything that comes into my head. Here's something a little more complicated on black glass, something that I threw into the furnace for a couple of weeks just to play with. These are my pattern vases. Again, I'm relating back to the painter that I never was. And these are little abstract paintings for me that I put in the annealer, pick them up on the side of the vases, and melt them all in. Here's the time. This is the crucial time of, I made these shard vases. Usually they wind up being on their base, but one particular piece was so badly damaged on the bottom that I turned it over, left it on the studio for about a week. And as I passed this, as I constantly kept on looking at it, it looked to me as a face. And that my transition from blowing vases to sculpture was because of that vase was sitting upside down. So I started creating these heads with the shards on it and the detail of the hair and the lips, and and the eyes and everything began to grow for me. I'm also paying attention to the bases in relationship to the heads. Of course, after meeting Duncan and all of his big pieces, I just went home and said, I got to go big. So I started stacking things, heads, body parts, vases upside down, and I did a little more hot sculpturing of the glass, as you can see in this piece with the legs and the arms. Again, the black glass came back to me. I started doing more colors, and I started adding things to the head, to the legs. I just, it just blew up my world for a while. Again, because of Duncan, I'm doing a lot more sandblasting, carving images in, putting bow ties on, and trying to pay attention to the hair of each individual piece I do. As I drive about the country doing shows and stuff, I'm always looking at people's hair, see if anything strikes me. And again, when I have different types of help, I get more creative and more technical with hot sculpturing arms and hands and fruit to put on some of these. This is one piece that I call Spreading Peace. I'm a big reggae fan, and so I'm doing a little hat, a little hair, and also the bird in the hand. This is something that I really love. My kids and family are vegetarians, so I made a lot of pasta in the past. All the hair on these curly heads was from making those curly pastas. I just looked at them and said, I can make hair out of these. So again, it's everyday things that you do around the house, you travel. These things influence my work. Now for a different look is some of the simple elements that I stack on top of each other. At the very beginning, if you use clear, you can understand shape. When you start getting the shapes right, you can start adding color. And again, I'm looking at these. These are prototypes that I looked at myself and said, keep pushing, but bring them back to the colors that you've always used. Again, another evolution of color and the disc and the sandblasting going on here. Okay, I'm going to show you a little video, especially made for this presentation today. It's several hours long, but of course, because my wife is so good at editing, she condensed it down to 6 minutes. I'm going to spare you the boring parts. I will talk along the way instead of having music. So I'm picking color up out of the oven, handing it off to my assistant, and as I gather the first bubble, she's heating the color so I can put it over the first layer of clear. I'm making a head, so it gives you some idea how we work together. Again, I'm from old school, so I'm doing everything myself. I still like to have that control. I'm pushing the color after heating it up over that cool bubble of clear glass. And I'm going to begin to add and blow glass to it. One layer of clear on top of another. Just so I get the volume of the glass that I need for this particular size head. As I'm blowing, I'm papering the bottom so we can blow out the end of it. I have another assistant heating up the eyebrows and the cheekbones that I'm going to be picking up momentarily. I got the head in shape pretty much. I'm going over, I'm picking up those shards out of the oven. Most of them are heated together, so they're tacked. But once in a while, I have to pick up a spare or two. Here, I'm making sure everything's in the position. My assistants go back to the table to get everything organized for me. I come over and pick them up. One side, then the other. Heat that in. As you can see, Gina's in the background collecting glass. We're going to start adding the eyes to it after she goes into the frit, the white frit. So it's a buildup of color and buildup of shards on top of each other. And everyone turns out different. It doesn't matter how many times I do it. We're putting on the eyes. Now I'll go back into the glory hole and heat up those eyes and begin to pull them so they're not just flat round pieces. There we go. Now I'm going to heat up again, and we're putting on the millies that I created ahead of time for this. Heating up the eyes to make them flat. And again, I have my assistants beginning to gather the hair for it. I'm picking up the nose. As I'm heating the nose in and everything, I have the assistant going to heat up all the hair. Oh, I'm sorry. This is she's working on the lips. She'll bring it over when it's hot. Serve it up. I cut it off, and then I cut it in half with the metal paddle. There we go. I'll heat it up again, go back with the ice pick, and make her smile. Again, here we are working with the hair, handing things off to the assistant, keeping everything hot, keeping everything on the pipe. I'm creating what I call a duck foot. This is one of the techniques for the hair that I came up with. It's very simple, but it's effective for me. Hand it off to my assistant, Gina. And then we're going to attach the hair. And as you can see, we're going to attach the hair, pull the pipe back, take the glass and position it in the back so I can kind of get everything at the right location and get all the hair looking the same. Gets a little hot. So Anna's on the door and also helping with the hair. She grabs the pipe when I want to do some of the hair myself. There we go. Again, here I am working the hair. Gina's standing by, and then Anna's controlling the head and the heat at this time. This is the last hair. Again, I attach it, stretch it, and then connect it to the back and cut it off. This is basically how I create every head. The hair might be different, but the face, the technique, and everything has a basic formulation for me. And my assistants really know when I need stuff, when I don't need stuff, and just being able to produce these heads in this short a time. I use a little wet file. I take it over to the knockoff box. I'm going to glove up here soon. Hit it with a bat. Put on all my safety precaution stuff and put it away. And when I open this to put it away, you'll see the body on the left side and a rondelle on the right. It's a quick shot. You might miss it. So that was the last piece of the day after creating the body, the head, and the rondelle for everybody.
So Jim, do you plan ahead what kind of piece you're going to make? Do you make sketches of the work?
I no longer make sketches unless I'm doing a brand new piece, but these heads are laid out. I really get in the studio in the morning or the day before, and I lay out all the rondelles and all the frit and all the millifioris and all the twisted noses. Depending on what I'm going to do, I kind of preview it and go through my head at night, and then come back to the studio and hope what I imagined the night before happens at the studio, which doesn't always happen.
It's such a unique and contemporary use of really traditional technique. It's pretty awesome.
Well, I was influenced by my professor, Joe Philip Myers. He used a lot of shards in his work, but he always melted everything in. And I thought it was a shame to have all that color on top of each other just on one surface. So here's the head and the body. The body is covered with a yellow frit, and underneath, you can see at the bottom, it's a turquoise color, just the same thing as the head. I'm using the wet saw in my studio to cut the top off of this. Same thing with the head. Now I'm going to rough grind it, and I position these together. They're not glued or anything, but I want to see the proportion of the head to the body. And then I'm going to start taping up the body so I can put images on that I've hand drawn, scanned, and put through the computer. There's coffee beans for the buttons. There's coffee mugs on the coat or the suit I'm going to make. And as I sandblast the parts that are not protected by the butter cut or the vinyl, you get to see the images of the piece here. Again, I put the head back on just so I can see how the relationship from the head to the body is before I even acid etch it. The reason I sandblast and acid etch it, the sandblasting cuts into the surface of the glass, and the acid etching really gives it a nice surface and brings out the color again for the piece. The sandblasting is just too harsh for me.
Jim, before we get started on the new work, do you ever do portraits for people or commissions like me and my dog, me and my children?
I've had people ask me, and it's a sad thing and a happy thing. I had a collector who bought from me down in Florida, and unfortunately his wife passed several years ago. And he asked me to create a head with yellow hair because his wife had this lovely flowing golden hair. So I was real honored and privileged to be able to do that piece for him. So I have in the past.
Yeah, it seems like that would be a natural. Thanks, Jim.
Certainly. Now you're going to see the new work that is available through Duncan's Gallery. And go ahead, if you see anything, contact Mary, Danielle, or Duncan. They'll hook you up. Here's my Monet vases. Again, the influence of using the millies and the colors are something that has influenced my work since the paintings. Some of them are sandblasted, some of them are clear or glossy. It all depends. Each piece that comes out of the annealer really speaks to me. And sometimes I go sandblasted, other times I just go, we're going to leave it as is. My pattern vases again, as I told you about the abstract patterns that go throughout the pieces and the different openings that I use, whether they're the bottles or the beak that I've been using lately.
Jim, I love these. We love these colors. Would you ever consider making a pattern vessel a little bit larger, say 12 or 14 inches?
12 inches maybe. That's probably my limit, but yeah, sure, I can try larger, of course.
Sure. Yeah, the colors, they make such an impact.
Yes, they do. I like to group them in threes. With all this time of being sequestered in my studio because of the virus out there, I've built a mold out of wood, and I've been producing these square bottles. A lot of people are recalling their days of milk being delivered at the back door every day. So this is something from my history. And now we're going to go into some of the later work. You saw some of the smaller piece of sculptures that I created. These are much larger, and I've worked out the color balance with these. I just love this piece. This is, again, very simple, very geometric shapes that I'm just stacking on top of each other, and it's kind of shows what's happening in my life of trying to balance everything going on, whether it's in my life or the world. I do at times do flat work, which is rondelles that I've cut up, fused onto each other, and this is a mask that I do. The only pieces on there is the lips and the hair that are glued on. This is my Sandman with the graphics of stars and moon, kind of, I keep on relating back to painters, the little Vincent van Gogh, Starry, Starry Night. Since I'm on vacation with my family, I like to dress up in Hawaiian shirts with loud prints. Here's one with Hawaiian flowers on a shirt with some wild hair, because nobody does their hair on vacation. Here's one I'm on vacation with a lei, Hawaiian lei on the shirt. As we talked before, Duncan says go bigger, so I started stacking these heads to get size, and it really brings people into a gallery setup or whatever, because they're fun, they're whimsical, they're colorful, and nobody else does them. My Queen of Hearts, that one strikes me very solidly because of the skirt with the millifioris that I created out of hearts, the swirly cane, and the sandblasting across the arms of the hearts, and a gold crown. Sorry. The next two are influenced by Carmen Miranda. Back in the 50s, I used to watch black and white TV. I used to love to see her sing and dance, and her costumes were just outrageous, but I never noticed them until we got Technicolor in the 60s. So that kind of blew up my world in terms of color, and that always stayed with me. So now that we spent a little time together, I hope you enjoy what I showed you. This is the last piece of the video that you saw of, I titled this The Best Part of Waking Up Sculpture, with the coffee, the wild hair, and the color of everything. I hope you enjoyed your time, and please, if you have any questions, or Sid, give me a comment. What did you think?
Fantastic, an awesome body of work. You've done really well over the last 40 years. Amazing.
Yeah, it's all to you, buddy. Thank you.
No, it's your work. You have an identity. That's the good thing about you know, being a glass artist is you have a unique look that nobody else will be mistaken for Jim Wilbat.
Well, that's what I strive for, and I thank you so much for that comment, Sid.
That and the fact that you've learned from the, you know, the masters of art like Frida Kahlo or Hans Hofmann and all that, because that's what I do with my work, is try and find an education from it as well.
Well, if I could only live up to your standards and Duncan's.
We were saying earlier before this whole session started how wonderful it is that in this case, the three of you, you know, have influenced each other and you know, supported each other during your careers. And in the contemporary glass movement, of course, that's so important. You know, that's part of the whole movement, is artists like you, you know, knowing each other, helping each other, inspiring each other. So that's a big part of why we're all here today. So,
Well, I want to say that between Sid and Duncan, the banter that goes back together, back and forth when we're together, it might seem a little harsh at times when we're having a cocktail or two, but there's a lot of love between the three of us because of the same kind of world we're in. And what we're sharing is it's hard to be a glass artist, and everybody does it at a different level. And I'm just happy that I'm surrounded by these two guys.
Happy that we're working at this age, you know.
You're
You
right.
oh, you must be retired. How can we ever retire? You know, we love what we do. I enjoy coming to the studio every single day.
A creative mind never gets retired. I want to thank everybody for joining us and for the support that you guys give me. I really do enjoy it.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
next week we have Paul Rodrigue from Canada. So if you can make it, please join us on Friday afternoon at 4. And have a great weekend. Stay safe and well. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
Jim.